Hey everybody, this is Dr. Johnson, and we are back now on video 2 of 2, looking at process analysis and improvement. So when we last met, we were looking at 4 different types of waste and where those types of waste might occur in our Hopewell Hospital Pharmacy prescription preparation process. And we're specifically focusing on 3 types as we look at the histogram. We're looking at waiting time, MURI, or overburden, and MURA, or unevenness. So let's look at these and compare what I'm proposing here to what you came up with before you started video number 2. So looking at MURA, or unevenness, we can see some unevenness across this process in 3 primary locations as we look at the histogram. And we've talked about this a little bit earlier in video 1 as well. So we can see that steps 2 and 3 are take quite a bit more time, relatively speaking, compared to steps 1 and 4. We can see that step 5 takes the longest amount of time by far, and then step 7, of course, takes more time than step 6. So all of this makes for a very uneven profile to our process, right? Ideally, what we'd like to see is something that's a little more consistent. It's never going to be perfect, flat all the way across, but the more equivalent we can make each step in terms of the amount of time it takes, the less waste we're going to have embedded in this process. And we can see this as we look at some of our other types of waste. So when we have unevenness in a process, it implies that we have overburdening in the process. And these are places where overburden occurs in our prescription fulfillment process. So for example, we look at step number 2. Compared to step number 1, step 1 only takes half a minute, right? Step 2 takes about 1¼ minutes here. And we can see that now there's going to be a big pileup of material right here, right? So we're going to have all these prescriptions processed, assuming a consistent flow or a consistent demand through our process. We're going to have a bunch of things piling up here that are done from step 1, and that's going to produce a lot of pressure on the person doing step number 2 to actually try to keep up. But they're never going to be able to keep up because just doing that step takes longer, a lot longer, more than twice as long as step number 1. Which has the potential for creating rework or quality problems related to production, comparing step 2 to step 1. Step 3 is very similar in length of time compared to step 2, so we're not going to see a lot of overburdening there, but we will again see overburdening comparing step 4 to step 5, and we'll see overburdening comparing step 7 to step 6. So lots of overburdening there, creating potential for errors and the need for rework in the process. So we want to pay attention to that. And then if we add waiting time to this, we've got some additional problems here. We're going to have waiting time, instead of the overburdening, waiting time is on the other end of the process, where we've got, for example, between steps 3 and 4, step 3 takes a lot longer than step 4, and so the person doing step 4 is going to be waiting for material to come through from step 3, right? Because they can do their step a lot faster than the prior step. We also see that related to difference between the transition between steps 5 and 6. Step 5 takes a lot longer than step 6, and so the person doing step 6 is going to be waiting around for stuff to come through from step 5. So we've got waiting time there. So we see these 3 types of waste already in our process: waiting time, overburdening, and unevenness. Difficult to tell if we've got rework embedded in this process from the histogram. So let's go back to our flowchart and look for rework. And we already identified back in video number 1 where some rework occurs, right? And that's all of these steps where we've got a decision that takes us back to the beginning of the process. So all of these process lines here going back to the physician writing or rewriting a prescription, then causes us to go back through these other steps of the process, right? So if we go back based on step 2, where we're not able to verify the prescription, that takes us back to step 1. If, when we're looking at duplicate prescriptions or allergies, particularly allergies, if the patient is going to have an allergic reaction, we're going to have to go back to the physician again to rewrite that prescription, right? Give us a prescription that doesn't produce an allergic reaction to the patient. And similarly, if the stock is out or it's unavailable or expired, we've got to go back to the physician and say, hey, we don't have that. Is there an alternative drug that would have equivalent therapeutic effects for the patient? Because we just don't have the one that you put down on the prescription. All of those things cause rework. So that is a problem, and that wastes time in the process, right? So how can we fix that? There's just a cleaner illustration of where the rework occurs in our process. So here's the big question. How can this process be improved to eliminate waste? And here's your task. Write a brief post, no more than 2 paragraphs, describing what might be done to reduce or eliminate the 4 types of waste identified in this case. And specifically, we're looking at waiting time, rework, overburden, and unevenness. And as you address those types of waste, how would those improvements increase process capacity? So use the March 7th discussion board in Brightspace to post your response, and we will then discuss those responses as we gather again on Friday the 9th to begin class. Talk with you then.